Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. And through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, I dhatu, up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate, paragate, parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Chandra Samaraya Me Deyata Om Gate Gate Varagate Varazangati Buddhizo Baba Conchu Sanji Gai Tempi Jishe Wadoji Mikadoji Shiwadoji Raji Meshi Peju Danji Jetin Koryezo Ngeri Dunja Jejo Shiwadan Mido Nube Yendan Dewadan Dumba Junjin Bon Zon Zon Joji Naji De Jan and The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. yo wa yo ye zo lama dang ba ni nan yi yo la yin de yo nin ji ye ra za me ru ye zi ma la za ye yo yi ya va ru zo. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Yedam Guru Ratna Mandala Gamni Ratayami. Jadan Jaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Yasu Chi Dagi Chinye Jipe Sunam Jin Jola Benji Zanye Rubaju Jadan Jaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Yasu Chi Dagi Chinye Jipe Sunam Jin Jola Benji Zanye Rubaju Jadan Jaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Yasu Chi Dagi Chinye Jipe Sunam Jin Jola Benji Zanye Rubaju.
What to Kate, go out to the Magoju shade, Marva, go out to the Magoju. Did you not see that? They go out to the Magoju. And the Magoju the Latine, Je Sambajua Tatu, Je Gunshi, Marva. Tamagoju with the Chendi Chonson, Yoris, Chendi Chawatege, and then the Vinyal Chegre, Digida, and then Chongo to Rul Chegres. 수석은 두스나 로변 파파 투메게 사용을 거스려는데 사용을 말해 사용을 정도와 다들 도도 사주비 거수 먹어 진행 조선 되게 치와 되게 녀와 되게 돈을 지그래 네 종어에다 지 네. 돈도 돈이 와대 대처바시에도 와대 말해
찬사 알레
네. 파파 도면에 사용을 거서 디바치와 치와 되게 먹어 치와 되게 녀알 제거래 링에다 종어 돈을 제거래스 대송으로 단도 사주비 거서 안에 링게 돈을 제거래 종어에다 제거 어디 대처봐도 나지 다 거와주들라 진리 조송지 쳐와들라 링게 라마이 종을 멀지그레스 어디시도 말 어디지 집어용도도
then 내조 사 가이 켈레
내주 쉐비사
가이 켈레
내주 쉐비사
이다 총어
쳐와되게 녀와지 링게다 종을 돈을 지나가서 시에다도 어디 벌로만 법아두면 사용하지래도
then 내조 사 then the chapa the becha
다든도 사주비 거서 어디 종어되게 네 이달지 그런 링 돈을 지그서 어때 만나도
the sajubi the donagare the
사주비도 간주 노래도
ale
간주 단돌 칸이 칸이 밥아두면 그도 공도 상도 줘야지로
lesson that so we are going through once again we're going in the section of karma and we're dealing with virtue and non-virtue. So when we look at virtue and non-virtue, we look at them and relate them to the 10 principal deeds of virtue and non-virtue. So this is the section that we're in, and when we deal with non-virtue and the 10 deeds of non-virtue, we find that each of them have 4 aspects in order for there to be path completion of action. So we find that there first has to be the basis, and then second, the attitude, third, the performance of the deed, and then fourth, the culmination or the completion. So we find these points that are made, and we can divide it into these kinds of categories. And then when we look at the misdeeds, and we look at their fruition, or the fruition of misdeeds, we find, according to the levels of yogic deeds, one of Asanga's texts, that if one engages in a great amount of non-virtue, then this gives rise to rebirth into a hell realm. If one engages in a medium degree of non-virtue, this gives rise to rebirth in a hungry ghost realm. And if one engages in a small degree of non-virtue, this gives rise to rebirth in the animal realm. So this is the presentation according to Asanga's levels of yogic deeds, but we do find other presentations where we find a switch, where the animal and the hungry ghost are in different orders. So we find in the sutra tradition, in the sutra text, various systems of belief, and one of them is that the greatest degree of non-virtue gives rise to a hell realm birth, a medium degree of non-virtue gives rise to an animal realm birth, and a small degree of non-virtue gives rise to a hungry ghost realm rebirth. So we find two systems of presentation, that we find two systems of presentation. Diksung.
다 이내 가서 들 도와도 다 저는 뭐 저 가고도 다 니가 들어가 샤고도 니가 들어가 샤는데 희정도와 안에 디바 먹어 저 충우여로 충우주 되게 저도 주지 예다도 돈을 얘기 좋아이
니가
예다가 주인 받다 돈을 주인
레서
예다가 주인 받다 너도 사주비 거서 예다가 가서 사용을 거서 예다가 주 송배시
So when we get into the points that are made, Geshe Rinpoche just gives the presentation that there are these two, and doesn't. So he gives these presentation of two, and then when we begin to debate, some doubts can arise, because then you can use quotes from scripture to prove both things. So you can say the animal realm rebirth is caused by a small degree of non-virtue, and a hungry ghost rebirth is caused by a medium degree of non-virtue. Why? Posit the reason. The reason is because we find in the levels of yogic deeds by Master of Sangha that this is the point. But then one can say, well, then a small level of non-virtue also gives rise to a hungry ghost rebirth, and a medium level of non-virtue gives rise to an animal rebirth. So these 2 points are different. So one could say, well, I have a doubt, because it seems like this cause can make one or the other happen, because based on the quotations that we find in Scripture. In the Sutra tradition, we find this other system that states that there is this difference in order. So is it possible that we can prove that the small and the medium are a cause for both hungry ghost and animal? So this is where doubts arise, and this is the reason for debate, for clarification. Because they can't be. It can't be that that can't be. That's the point. That can't be. So this is why the doubt arises. So this is where doubt, we accumulate our doubt. This is where doubt arises. So Geshe Rinpoche just presents these two ways and doesn't say to follow one or the other. So then this raises our doubts. Jamba?
Intelligent.
Oh, Tuche. Less so. So what is the reason behind this differentiation? We find that some texts present the hungry ghost as a lesser of negative fruition, because of the fact that a hungry ghost is quite intelligent. So an animal doesn't have the same level of intelligence that a hungry ghost does. And this is the reason for the difference in order at times. So when we say that it seems like this medium level of degree can cause both of these things, why is that? Why is there this contradiction? And it's because of the points that are made about the intelligence of the hungry ghost.
What the large what the Namgyal
So then when we get to the great treatise on the state of the path to enlightenment, we find fruitional causes, fruitional karma, we find environmental karma, and causally concordant karma. So we find these various, they're actually, in terms of results, fruitional results, causally concordant results, and environmental results. But it's in the section speaking of karma, results of karma. So we find these points that are going to be made there.
총네 나 뒤다 지도 아마 총이지라 아마 총 아마 사율 제바이지라 사율 제네네 존데네 아마 토설 사율베네 야자 마페 다른 두서들라 사보 두신라 그래 사율마 매일 배가 두서 드링키고.
So this is the day that we celebrate the Buddha leaving the God's realms and coming into our realm. Then 아마 가래
사지 총사도 샤브 뒤지 나로 아마 총로 아마 싫어 아마 신 살지위지로 안 조된데 주고든 아마 토사 사율 페브로
네. 샤치투비 아마 드론손 then 샤치투바 아마 톤손 then latsujiten. Okay, so then Shakyamuni's mother passed away. So Shakyamuni went to the God's realm, and his mother passed away. And when she passed away, she went to the God's realm. And when he saw her, he then returned to the earth, or to the world. So this is the story behind that. Shakyamuni's mother, Shakyamuni was in a God's realm. Shakyamuni's mother of that life passed away, then ended up in the God's realm, and then he came back to the earth. Then koin ama the chan the Peshugarik Geshe Sheson. Ama Geshe Sheson.
Ama la chadiola. And Jondende what the con, Ama Hayul Jeveza, the Ama 200.
Okay, so I was wondering if his mother said something, if there was some dialogue, and he's just repeating the story. So that I stated. Bigson.
What did Sagande one
So it's similar in terms of importance today to the month of Buddha, Sakadawa. So in terms of the importance of the day, it's similar to that. So one very small virtue that one engages in today would then turn into 100,000 virtues. It's a time of magnification.
What you thought, what Tangasu Diba Mago Jugan what they Diba Mago Jugan on there Diba Mago Jutalatan doing Tamatisung Asison, Lugison, Lugilson, Naganavaje, and the Ijinavasum Marva. Lunga is on the Dibala, Jubukan, Chau Marite, and the Sanjigo. Deba Chawat to go to Rujin, what the Jews is, and indeed those who treating Magijum Sudinjo. What then is only is a marva? What the Magijum Sudin Shirak Penchaber is, Susu not on Son Jeta, Raja Chula dining and on the Jesina Chingapa Lebane, Notujin Sudin Legemes, Magijum Sudin de Hatame, Tenor Tuvalaya, Magijum Sudin Gugre. Yetu Dajubu Tubale to Gugre, Rajela Gugre, Shanju Sambale Gugre, Saji Kumutubale Gugres, Omajuban Sunduas.
The Omajup the Yentu Ranje.
Suzu not on Sana Suzu, Dendrilan, Marve, Dendrilan. And then Suzu, Sonji, Sonji, and then Yetu Ranje. The Sule Sutin Gugres, Rajan Chula, Rajan Chuzia. Or the Raja in Raja and Dani Anada, Jesse Nagaba Leva, Jesse Shanju Sambake, Shanju to Saint Sudan, Shindo loves you to Golo, Jumagijumo, Sudin Latin Gures, Saji Gumutuba Latin Gures, what the pension was on the Marva?
Lesson.
Pension was
So when we make an order in terms, when we speak of non-virtuous deeds, we can make them in the order of 10. 3 non-virtues of the body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, harsh words, gossip, and let me use the words that they use here. So we have in terms of, I'm just going to go through it in this order. So in terms of, I'll go through the way that it's stated here. So 3 of the non-virtues of the body, stealing, sexual misconduct, and killing. And 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, divisive speech, offensive speech, and senseless speech. And then 3 non-virtues of the mind, covetousness, malice, and then wrong view. So when we look at this in order, it's very beneficial because when one engages in the ethics, which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, one can have rebirth into higher realms. One is able to achieve the state of a hearer or solitary realizer. One is able to achieve the state of a bodhisattva or a complete Buddha, all in dependence upon ethics. So we find in the Madhyamika Avatara, Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, where this is quoted, that the ordinary beings, hearers, solitary realizers, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas are all ethical behavior. So we find, this is not the exact quote, but this quote is in the Madhyamika Avatara that states those points. Translator's note. Rinpoche quoted it exactly, and I didn't find the exact quote, so I quoted it as exactly as I could in an oral translation. Less so. Less so.
Tena lutan da luatawa, legendary mebatawa, conjusion mebatawa la sobato injiro.
The demo.
Lobatawa.
The timu.
Lobatawa that Tomu Gitawa, and the Shak Gitawa, and then Shedan Gitawa.
So we've already gone through the first points related to the non-virtuous deeds. So we've gone through the 3 of the body and 4 of the speech. So now we're going to deal with the 3 non-virtues of the mind. So we begin with covetousness, and then malice, and then wrong view. So when we look at these, when we look at the objects that relate, or the emotions that relate to these various misdeeds of the mind, we find that covetousness is influenced by attachment. We find that malice is influenced by anger, and we find that wrong view is influenced by delusion. So we find this presentation as well, but we begin with covetousness. Nasenji, okay, shine. Okay. So we're on page 224 in the English. 170 in the Tibetan, anyone who's following along. But they'd hear him say that in Tibetan, so maybe that's not necessary.
원셀인데 내가 이제 사이 너도 농셔남이 통면도 건대사 지용도 사근 너도 농셔남이 통네 센터가 소득인다지 어느 데서 좀 나선 좀면도 이제 너도 유지도스 이제 너도 유지도서 두바이 바데 근데 상지가 통으로 상진도 자체 말로 나출 와데 이제 너도 유지도 통용도 잡아지고로 나출 잡아지하게 요 네 체지 저주다 포주 저주도 여들보다 포주 저주 단신이 바차 단신다 아니 내거기 저주다 포주 저주라 때네 근데 이제 너도 유지도서 사이 롱셔나무 사이 너도 유지나무지 통네 센터가 소나는지 제용도 나센 지금은 와 이제 너도 유지
근데 참아 the Tenzin the gari sombre that's kali kabudu
다 뇌차도서 그걸로 주고 그러죠.
Less so.
사실 뇌차째 말 뇌차 주매 베지.
less so
뇌디 시리 본심 베지.
less so
오고 뇌차가 주대 아니 시리다 what the 수이지 말বে 뇌차가 바차라서 봐. 수용하게 아니 예주나도 유지도서 하이 너도 유지나면서 통내 센터가 소득한다지. 어디 지정도 나선 지금으로
the high the chapa
이제 너도 이제 이동화 여러다.
less so
이동화 상지가 통으로.
less so
상진도 잡무도.
less so
나도 이제 너도 이제 이도 통화가 되네. 안는 대사도 간다서 이동화 셀인데 봐. 루루제되는 말이야. 이제 너도 이제 또 사이 너도 네 유지 나머지 통네. 센터 가서 소득하는 지원도 콜루루제.
ale hlapa hly yomare
God 너도 유지. 나주 너 제지 너도 유지도 하이롱 너도 농주 개마로 이나 따부 통고르스.
Okay, ascribing quality. Okay, so we'll do. So when we begin with covetousness, covetousness is the first among the three non-virtues of the mind. So like the other 7 that we've gone through already, it requires the 4 basis, attitude, performance, and culmination. So these are all necessary to be present. So when we begin, what the basis of covetousness is, it are the wealth of possessions of another. So for instance, the food, nice food or drinks or the things that someone else has are the basis for this. Now there are more parts to this because there then has to be a desire that finds those things basis attractive and then becomes attached to it. So we can't say that if there is this basis, there is necessarily this attachment and this negativity, because there are things that are attractive. There are wealth and possessions. There are things that are found to be attractive. The Buddha sees all things as attractive, but because he or she no longer has the imprints, the obstructions to omniscience, and the afflictive obstructions, there's no way for that improper mental conduct to give rise to attachment. So what the improper mental conduct is that one is putting qualities because of one's grasping at true establishment and because of one's previous imprints, whether they be obstructions to omniscience or the afflictive obstructions of attachment. So if one has these previous imprints still present of attachment and this grasping at true establishment, then the possibility for the arisal of this covetousness is there. If one no longer has these things, then the cause is not present. So the attachment can't happen, so the covetousness does not happen. So here, the basis of covetousness are the wealth and possessions, but then that one finds attractive, but then the next part is that then one desires and wants and becomes attached to because of this attractive nature that one sees. So it's almost as one is putting the qualities for instance, the God's realm, we find all of these excellent qualities of their enjoyments and so forth. And it's almost as if we turn, through our mental conduct, the things that we experience into these wonderful, we exaggerate their qualities to the point that they're the qualities almost that they would be the enjoyments of a God's realm. And then we desire them and become attached. So we're adding these qualities onto them that are inflated or exaggerated. Diksam.
Tapana ngaso de nasen da nasen tu ngalo ngaso taba dreams lo lo shi san nyomo yin lo lo shi chaos. Taba dreams lo da san tang waters.
So that if this is, it's very similar. So this covetousness and this malice is a wrong view. Or wrong consciousness. And it's as wrong as that idea of grasping at a rope as being a stake. Because if it is an afflicted thought, if it is afflicted, then it is necessarily a wrong consciousness. So this is why we state that this is a wrong consciousness, just like apprehending a rope as a snake is a wrong consciousness.
Okay,
so if there's the presence of affliction, then this is the case. It's the same as grasping at a rope as a snake.
나생이 통대하게 이동하더라고요 말이지. 나생이 이 전주는 유지대 사이 너도 유지다고 통과하랬어. 그 사이 너도 유지래도 말보다 룰루시 어떤 자는 거야.
So here the basis of covetousness are the wealth and possessions of another that one finds attractive. And then it says that is this finding it attractive the basis of covetousness, and no, it is the exaggerated mental conduct that is related to the basis, which one is then coveting. So it's the exaggeration that looks at it as almost the enjoyment of a god, puts these qualities on it that aren't there, and then so this is what the wrong view is within this. The point of wrong view within the covetousness is that the attractive object itself isn't what makes that. It's the exaggeration of its attractive qualities. Because one could debate and say, is it not attractive? And one could say it is attractive. But it's the over-exaggeration of the qualities that one then grasps and becomes attached to that makes it this basis that is then one covets.
The other way around. And then Dujita Nyamonta Colonso Marba, Dujin Tella, Doshebos, Dujita, Jenjunata Ujila, Jenjunata Uyimba, Doshebate, Dosheres Marba, Dosheba, Nyamon Sumocano, and then the Chalaten Nasenjiva Yore, Condolaten Nasenjiva Yore, Tamulaten Nasenjiva Yores, Sumocano, Marba, Colon Dagrishawa, and then Kulon Dagishaw and Dobos. That Nasan Kulon de and the Jenji Northern Ujite and the Beijing Algun do Samba. Dagishaw and Dobo, the Zamarbe. Tangal Gun do Samba. What the Jaguaris Marbe? What did you?
Okay, so the basis of covetousness are the wealth or possessions of another. Of the three aspects of attitude. So when we look at the second aspect of a path completion, we find that it's the attitude, and there are three divisions of attitude. First, the perception. Second is the affliction, and then third, the motivation. So we look at, it says, of the three aspects of the attitude, the perception is the perceiving the basis to be what it is. The basis is the wealth or possession of another. So one is perceiving that it is another's wealth or possession. The second is the affliction is any among the three. So this is covetousness motivated by attachment, covetousness motivated by anger, covetousness motivated by delusion. And it says then the motivation is the desire to make the wealth or property your own. So here one is saying that someone else's wealth or possessions. I desire someone else's wealth or possessions. So I want to make their property mine. So once this is the motivation, one is wishing that one could make another person's properties, possessions, wealth their own.
Ta joas je samba chi ta somba joa de mar joa ta je ne da yuje de ne samba sambi de la 조아시바오스 상비 되는 전지 너다 유지들와 전지 너다 유지대 수술 용하게 레가지버데 상담버데 어디 조아레스 조아 전지 너다 유지대 다 수술 용하게 다시 제어로다 레가지어
Okay.
상담의 레가지어들 조알라그스
Okay. The performance, so we get to the third part of the aspects. The performance is striving at the completed purpose. So the completed purpose, here the striving is referring to engaging in the thought process or the work that it takes to make someone else's property your own. So it's the actual work, the actual thinking about it, that is the performance itself. So it's the method one is engaging in to make the property, the method one is engaging in to make another's property one's own.
Joanne Sambi Dundala, Joashebos, Joanne Sambi Dund, Sambi Dungeon, Ujitala, Joashebas, Susulunage, Legajeba, Susulunage, Santamatele, Joalagres.
The name?
Joa Tassaro, that tattoo del Momodo, tattoo dele, and tattoo de la Munda, Zubice, the Mazubice, Saji Sunzo Marbe. Tagunga do what they imbere. Tatunga the Dagashaw Nabo, Sheson des, Doan Jire. Nola Suba Dagashawa, Juji Nava, Jenji Noda, Uji to Sukalo, Nali shoes, Manatavan, Dabomendua. Tanisan down do, nothing was it chivaris, nothing was it chivaris.
The duale.
Dua Pejimento Tambuta, Rova.
That's a
Tatune, the dagger shower, Nabo, Sheson des, Papa to me son to Indro. That gentleman's den de Sherelua. Nola Suba dagger shower, Juji Hambos, Tea to that waters, changing that to so, Nali shoes, Manata in summer. The sound of Kuyundi, nothing tattooed Jane waters.
So when we look at the performance itself, it is engaging in the work, engaging in the methods, engaging in the mental process that one needs to in order to complete the purpose. And here the purpose is acquiring another person's property that one desires. So then it says the culmination is thinking, may it become mine, about the wealth and the like. And it says Asanga describes this as a determination that it will become yours. So here, when we look at Janyan Cheba's outline of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, in this section we find three sections. We find first the actual covetousness, then the full-fledged covetousness, and then the not full-fledged covetousness. So we find these three categories. Here, you could also say abbreviated, but it's the actual abbreviated covetousness, so the first category. So here, Sangha describes it as may it become mine, or the determination that it will become yours. So this determination that it becomes one's own item is the culmination or the completion. And then there's a large amount of information that will then go about this. But we find in Asangha's compendium of determinations, the points. We find in the compendium of determinations these points. So I think that's everything. Let me make sure I got everything. So the determination that it will become yours. For this to be full-fledged covetousness, 5 qualities are required. So that gets into the second category. I covered everything.
Tattoo Dagashaw Nabo, Sheson, what the Imbare, Nola Suba, Jirum Jinji, Jenju, not on Lonjola Suba, Dagger, Juji, Habo, Nalion shoes, Manataba Marbe, the sound of the Kusuna, nothing tattooed Chebares, nothing Mujit Chebares, also Zubi, nothing Chebares, Marbe, Hamba, Tella, nothing Zubi, Chungan. 나선 용수 줘발라 중앙창 나선 용수 줘발라 중앙창 우레스
Yes.
용수 주비 세다 마주비 세니 사진이 용수 주비 세다 말에 나선 용수 줘발 제발라 중앙창 우레스 중앙 쇼스나 랑기 롱쇼라 차비 센던데마스 나선데 제발라 랑기 르동 롱쇼들 차바요 우레스 차바 메간을 때 나선 지금 말레스 안에 롱쇼 수반대비 차선지 센던데마스 안에 롱쇼 뭐 사야게 너버요 ken지 차바요 ken지 고니제 안에 제진나라 수바 잠부 용수 또진 네 로냐와시비 추비 센던데마 제진나라 되차요 버지스만로아 추비 센던데마 송제 젠다기 강이마다 다그 주진냐봐 젠다가 잘라 너던 롱쇼도 속걸로 나를 용 쇼상비 쿠이 상바다 데마스 어디 나를 고노 나를 용 쇼상비 쿠이 상바다 데마스 다드네 나센데 나바디바 나센데 모차메지 나센 공사요 말 모차메지
당
예미링아반 중알라 예미링아반 중하면 셰비 세진네비 센터데마 나 상고레스 나 상소나 용수 주비 나센레스 나도 마사나 용수 마주비 나센 장레스 어디 좀 말이야
ngapa ewa ni yerbe the ngutsa mepa dang or cheek
ngapa
ngutsa me
나센데 뭐차 매지 예밀링아 봐
예메 the ewa ni
예밀링아 뜻지지
cheek okay
예밀링아 봐 좋아하면 셰베 세진네 센터데 뭐 지당고도
okay
지나바드레
okay
또 갈래 고들 주다
so then so this desire that's almost like so according to Sangha when we look at the abbreviated truth or the actual covetousness, we would say that it's this aspiration, like Asanga states, that thinking that may it become mine. So thinking the determination that it will become yours. So this aspiration that may someone else's property or possessions become my own. So this is that first category. Then the second category is the full-fledged covetousness category, according to Jayan Sheba's Lamrim. And it says, for this to be a full-fledged covetousness, 5 qualities are required. So it's necessary for all 5 of these to be present in order for a full-fledged covetousness to be present. So first, having a mind that is exceedingly attached to your own resources. So one has to be attached to one's own things, first and foremost, in order for this covetousness to take place. Second, having a mind of attachment that wants to accumulate resources, so a mind that wants to accumulate many things. Having a mind of longing due to comprehending or experiencing the good things of others, their wealth and so forth, so seeing others' things and wanting them. Other people's things and wanting them, having an envious mind, thinking that whatever is another person, others should be your own. Being envious and thinking that those persons' things, I wish those persons' things were my own. And having a mind that is overcome due to covetousness by shamelessness and an obliviousness about the determination to be free from the faults of covetousness. So what I asked Rinpoche is this number 5, are there 2 mind states, shamelessness and obliviousness? And Rinpoche said it's it's one category, so it's one thing. It's a shameless oblivious. It's combined. So you're shamelessly oblivious to the fact that you don't know that you should be free from these faults of covetousness. I was just wondering if it broke down into more categories or not, and it doesn't. That's one kind of state of mind, shameless oblivious, shamelessly oblivious. So if we keep going over this information again and again, as we have been, then slowly we'll have it. We'll know this information. And we'll really know what covetousness is. Really know.
니바 마주비 체달라 마주비 체다 유도주 마주비 천지제시 사지송 제도와 마주비 체달라 마주비 체다 유도주 안에 마주비 천지 제바셰바들 네 용수 마주비 나센 도시마서
The dochu, Sena?
도주 다들에 도주
Nge hako do the megewa ju kanga. They go, you know, see.
that collision yeah.
Okay, so then we get into the next. Those are the 5 that deal with a full-fledged covetousness. So how it makes a full-fledged covetousness. Now we get to the next section in Jayan Sheba's outline of a not full-fledged covetousness, and then there are 3 sections that we deal within there. So here is what. So the first section deals with the actuality that if there is these 5 minds aren't present, then there is no covetousness. So this is the first point that Jamyang Sheba makes. The second point is whether or not these 5 points relate to the other 9 non-virtuous activities, if these 5 have to be present or they apply in some way to the other non-virtues. And then the last category are the examples in Jamyang Sheba's outline. So we find first the actual non-full-fledged covetousness, what it is in actuality. It's when the 5 minds aren't present. And there are these other things, but the 5 minds aren't present. And then the levels of yogic deeds point about the 10 non-virtues and the application of these 5 to those as well. And then, of course, the examples.
다 용수 주바들 중간 상고 차로와 다 용수 마주비 체도와 나리 점들에 안에 생아부 가로 마찬나 나세지 세니 모두소스 다 용수 마주비 체들이스 니바
Oh, so the
송바로 송바 용수 마주비 체도스나 가바땡고르스나 세 등아부 가로 마찬나 나세지 세니 모두소스 용수 마주비 체땡고스
then Jayan Sheba ewa sum say tambo.
더 송바
The somba sum yure.
더 송바로 알레 더 마주비 체세 되지
Okay.
되지 되는 유 도주지
Okay.
마주비 체제시스
Okay, tuche.
yeah
So the first, we look at Jayan Sheba's category. It's the measure of a not full-fledged covetousness. So that would be the most accurate, the measure of not full-fledged covetousness. So it's if any of these 5 minds are not present, there is no actual full-fledged, there's no actual covetousness. So it's not full-fledged if any among these 5 are not there. So this is the measure. And then the other presentations in Scripture about the 10 non-virtues is the second category, and then the examples. So if any among these 5 are not present, there is no actual covetousness. Dene?
마주비 체들라 마주비 체다 유 도주 마주비 체 제바시바 송고나네 마주비 체드가 치가게 된 거라서나 생아부 가론시 마찬나 나세지 세니 용수 모두소서 되게 마주비 체된 거스 송고
So when we look at what the measure of the actual third category is, which is not full-fledged covetousness, we would say that the measure of it is defined by this point here. If any of these 5 minds are not present, there is no actual covetousness. So this would be how we would define a non-full-fledged covetousness, is covetousness where any among these 5 minds are not present.
다 유도주 돈데 되고요. 너가 주가라 년주시비 살레 조아송소스 단자지비 어디 지름이 도바 주고레스. 너가 주가래 네 조아 매송게 인지로다. 매송게도 요송게 마비 인지래. 지름이 저한테 너가 주가래 조아 요라고 그래서 주생 가르스나 네 파바 도메게 년주시비 사이 거서 네 너가 주가래 조아송 베지스.
So this next section is a doubt that arises in other sources that Lama Tsong-kha-pa clarifies, and it deals with the other 10 non-virtues. So here it says the levels of yogic deeds says that to apply these 5 to all 10 non-virtues. So do these 5 apply to the other 9, yes or no? So there's a debate or doubt that may arise, and Geshe Rinpoche is saying yes, these 5 do apply to the other 10 non-virtuous deeds by way of stating that it's found in the levels of yogic deeds by Master Asanga.
Geshe
Rinpoche says that when we find if these 10 non-virtues apply, if these 5 apply to the 10 non-virtues or not, we find Geshe Rinpoche presenting the source of the level of yogic deeds where it says that is the case. So there is a doubt that may arise, and then Geshe Rinpoche qualifies his assertion with a text, and that's Asanga's levels of yogic deeds. I know I just repeated myself 3 times, sorry. So the third is the examples. So this next part that is kind of an extensive explanation is saying that if there is covetousness but these 5 aren't present, then it's not a full-fledged covetousness. And so what are some examples of a non-full-fledged covetousness?
양 나센 소스 어떠바드레도 용수 마주 나센 정도 주
Less so.
최가 마선에 나센 주 드레스
Less so. As for the manner in which an action might constitute covetousness that is not full-fledged, it is such covetousness when you give rise to the following desires. So we have the measure of covetousness, and then we have the performance related to the other 10 non-virtues, and now we have the examples. So there'll be examples of a non-full-fledged covetousness. So first, the thought, oh, how nice it would be if the master of the house were to become my servant and things could be however I wish them to be. And this could also be applied to places where there are leaders. So for instance, in Middletown there's a leader, in Hartford there's a leader, and if we were to think how nice it would be if I became the leader and they were under me, and here it says to become my servant. So if the roles changed, where I became the leader and they became under me or below me, and then I could have things however I want them to be. So it's this type of thought that is the first non-full-fledged covetousness. It's this wish for a role reversal of someone who's above you. And Rinpoche gave the examples of, for instance, the leaders of the towns we're abiding in and so forth, who make the decisions. Next, also such a thought with regard to his wife and children, etc., and his physical possessions such as food and so forth. So in regards to a king's, or here the leaders of Middletown or Hartford, their wife or children or their possessions, and then there were examples that were given such as food and so forth. The thought, oh, how nice it would be if others knew me to have such good qualities as being dispassionate, retiring, persevering, learned, and generous. If only people knew me to be a great meditator, if only people knew me to be so generous and a great practitioner. So these are the thoughts that are embedded within number 3. So there are these listed, and then Rinpoche gave some thoughts that one could have related to these. May everyone know I'm a great scholar. So these are all within number 3. Number 4. That's cool. Number 4, the thought, let me finish, because I'll forget the stuff. The thought, how nice it would be if kings and ministers and the 4 types of followers of the Buddha were to respect me, and if I were to obtain such necessities as food and clothing. So here, 4 types of followers of the Buddha, referring to the fully ordained monks and nuns and the novice monks and nuns. So just a point Rinpoche made within that. If I could obtain all of these things, then I could be respected by these other types of individuals mentioned. Developing desire, thinking, oh, may I be reborn in the future as a deity and enjoy the deity's 5 sensory objects. So the deity's zudra, the form, smells, tastes, sounds, tactile sensations, and so forth. So these are referring to the 5 sensory objects: Zudra, Ro, Reja. Okay, the 5, and then may I be reborn. So this is a desire to be reborn. And here it says, and for instance, as as a deity in the heaven of controlling others' emanations. And that's if we look at the 6 realms, the heaven of the 33 and so forth, and the controlling ones and other zones, emanations, and Ganden, and so forth, we find that the 4 great kings, that's the other one. So we find that this is the highest among those realms, and it's a desire, a coveting the things that one has in those realms. And then number 6, developing desire for the possessions of parents, children, servants, and the like, or the possessions of your fellow religious practitioner. No commentary. Dixon. Okay. Now. So now we get into the next malice, harmful intent. So when we look at the 3 of the non-virtues of the mind, covetousness, malice, and wrong view, we find that we've gone through the first and we've completed covetousness, and now we're getting into malice. And if I didn't translate it before, going back to the 10 non-virtues, if it is a non-virtue, it doesn't necessarily have to be among those 10. These are just the principal teachings of the most course. So I just remembered I forgot to translate that. So if it is non-virtue, it does not necessarily have to be among those 10. That's just the principal teaching Buddha gave, which were the coarsest. Peace.
Ta nösen ji jidan du shedan yumu ne chizu bu jitawa jinos juin chama chizu dabare sita nösen ji jide chizu jide jibare ane nösen ji du shede chizu ji du shede jibare nösen ji yumu de chizu yumu de jibaja ures chizu bu jitawa jinos chizu bu jitawa jinos ta chizu bu kadu del de duada.
So then we look at this first point about malice. It says the basis, perception, and afflictions are the same as in the case of offensive speech. So when we look at the 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, divisive speech, offensive speech, and senseless speech, this is among those. So it says, so they're in the same as in the case of offensive speech.
Lani chambajina pei jadang druju reguldu ole tin sombare
Jadang
druju regu
okay.
ole tin sombare.
So this means now we need to go back to the section on offensive speech in the Lamrim Chenmo. So 223 in the English is where we turn back to for this section.
Chitubi jene kune nasen ji jejubi senjenos kune nasen ji jejubi senjende kune nasen ji jejubi senjende ane wote nasen ji jetere chitubi jetibares.
Okay, less so.
Kola tene nasen ji jejubi senjen bimarbe wote ane chitubi jere nasen jere jibares.
Then they're long, they're donagare. The Inchi cave, kabiyare. Detsuko Rinpoche. Kongi mebichi.
Nuese dia chizu katul tagudo.
Lessa.
Chizu bi jene kune nase ji jujubi sejeno, kune nase ji jujubi bin.
Lessa.
Wote nuese ji jeteres, chizu bi jetjibares. Sambalan düşe tanyomu hajinos sambalan düşe sana ne naseji jujubi senjenla senjenyama düşe badinjirwa naseji jujubi senjenla senjenyama düşe badin düşece nyomu dan düşa kondu shedan son karon kaman cibares wote ta nese dote olmaja udu kuzur wote tawudin kuzul ten udu.
And Nusa and the Nashegare.
Nasenji, Gune Nasenji, Gune Nasen Nasen Luda, Nasenji, Juju Sinjin. Sinjin de la Tene, Nasen, Susujul, Nasen Jiag Jushik Duna, Jushik Sinjin de, the Nasenji Jeres, Nasenji Jeteres.
Okay.
Telaten Nasen Jungware, Telaten Nasen Jungware, Marve.
Less so. Then
Sambalan Duche dans Yamon Hajinos.
and Duche, the Nama Chipa.
Nasenji Jujubi Sijela, Nasenji Jujubi, Sijayama Doshiba, Telatima Doshiba, Duche Jiro. Yamo, Tosun Karo Jiro, Hamana Jeresunde.
So here, so then when we go to the section on offensive speech, it says the basis of offensive speech is a living being in whom you can engender hostility. So this is the same basis as one for malice. So it's a sentient being, another being who you can engender hostility. So this is the first part. And it says of the 3 aspects of category of attitude, the perception is perceiving a living being who you can engender hostility towards. So the perception is a living being, and then the afflictions are as before. So the afflictions are referring to the attachment, hatred, and delusion. So those are the affliction. Then gulung yomare.
Gulung de Gatulio.
The gemma. Okay.
Nöse Jijitan, Nöse Jijitan, Dushi Nyomusone, 제주보 제다와신노 제주다버레스 다말레자고 된다버레스.
So we begin with a statement in the section going back to 225 on Malice. It says the basis, perception, and affliction are the same in the case of offensive speech. So we went back to the section on offensive speech and dealt with that. Now we go back to the section on Malice.
다 나세 제주주비 세제스나 나세 제주주비 세제스나 모두 여바 마이나 시당 여바 갈란주도 된다고 인사말베. 나세 제주주비 세제데 안에 나세 제주주비 세제데 안에 나들 통요들 예도 뭐 모두 통요 모두
Natsu shit long
모두바 통네 모두바 대야 dünabaji 통도 맨도
Do poison do
animal dünabaji 통네 콜로로 제자고 들어 안에 제주는 동로셔도 이동와 사이 dü즈나면 통화나지 안에 나선 제주집에 생제데 안에 이동와 dü나모 what dü다바지 통면도 dü다바지 통네 들 나선 정우로
do dendru there's some
animal
dendru
도자 시부지 통네 되는 통거로다
like an animal
draw
enemy
the enemy
draw
enemy 다바지 통네
lesso
안들는 정우로
lesso.
로로 시되는 거지 말베.
So when we look at how this malice takes place, when we look at how we become attracted to, we see things that we find attractive, and then we become attached to them, and then we prescribe these qualities to them that are almost like the qualities of God's enjoyments, and then we become attached. In this case, when we look at malice, it's the opposite. We see it as unattractive. And then we see the basis, which is a person, not only as unattractive, but then we, in the same way we previously did with transforming these things that we desire into nectar, we transform this being into an enemy based on this idea that we have that they are not attractive to us. And then this is influenced by our anger. And then we have malice towards them. So without this feeling or this influence of the anger present, then we don't really have this malice. So that's why it says the basis of engender. When we go back to offensive speech, it speaks of engender hostility. That's the point that's being made there. Is it's an object that we find unattractive that then we become hostile towards because we see it as an enemy. So then we have malice or harmful intent.
안나 그 가만 갈 너바 제송 단다 그 갈 너바 제고래 쇼고 너바 제그래 주지 많이 비지 산도 못 당요 둘래 어느 로로시 정우 말베 로로시 지네 틀라데네 콘트제네 로로시 정우 이러다.
So then we think before this person harmed me, then we think now they're harming me, and then we think in the future will harm me, and then we have improper mental conduct related to those points that exaggerates those points, and then we have this wrong consciousness. This anger arises, and there's this wrong consciousness present.
차지 bomba 마이다. 추지 마이 이제래 너무 좀 상황이스. 안에 너무 bomba 잡아주고 너무도 지주들래 차지 마봉바주고 그래서 안에 추지 마이 비 일시바 더도 초발을 때는 너무 정오래 너자 정오래 콘도 정오래 나제 정오래스.
So if one has this
추지 마이 비지 어디 말বে.
So if one has this improper mental conduct, then this will give rise to the gari jegare, the sushin yeshe.
너무지 주들래 비지 저거 송송도 그도 차지 bomba 많이 당스. 너자 마봉바 주고 그래서 네, 자지 녀모바 마봉바 주고 그래서
tambo
녀모바 봉잖아. 네, 녀모지야요 말해서 상지가 도줄 녀모지야 무도와스 자지 봉사 해치. 자지 봉바 많이다. 안에 주지 많이 비지. 주지 많이 이제 일하시바 그래서 일하시바는 안에 달라테네 안에 녀모지 그래서 유니와 내버스. 너차지 지유의 타 녀보 타녀버 레온 자지그래 콘도 제사게 유데 타녀버 자송나 안 정거지 유는 영화 내발레 녀모준 상황이스.
So when we look at the way that these things arise, there are various things that make negativities arise. First sign that they can arise is that the affliction has not been abandoned yet. So these things will not arise if the affliction has been abandoned, but if the affliction has not been abandoned, then these things will arise. And the next point of how these afflictions arise and negative conduct arises is based on improper mental conduct. So it's through improper mental conduct that is thinking of things that are attractive and exaggerating their qualities, or thinking things that are unattractive and exaggerating those qualities, that causes the arisal of these negativities.
Madu yoba mayena shetan yoba kalanjus. Madu yoba mayena shetan yoba kalanjus. Ta madu bade ne nasen ji ju sinje da bade no ko nasen ji sa ge jetel ko yedu mo tongoro. Madu ba tongoro. Yedu mo tongoro. Yedu mo ne trada ba ji tongoro a. Tani ji tong no lo ji sha no ta. Ana telbe jao ji shubi ne
So we have this idea, this improper mental conduct that sees something as unattractive, sees something as impure or ugly, and then there is a arisal of a thought or an arisal of an emotion related to this observation, and then then we have the arisal of such things as malice. So we have the arisal of malice based on this reaction to what we find to be unattractive or ugly.
Madu yoba maina shida yoba kalanjus maduba ko kondolangen tele ko maduba to yidu mo tondu go.
So the first, when we look at the basis, it's a sentient being who you can engender hostility, who you can have this anger towards because you have this this idea that they are unattractive or that they are ugly, and then you have the arisal of this reaction to it.
What is that? Kulun kariversana kulun diba la suban debates ta dia ta soya ta doya ta watene ki deba jeba tele kulun re ane na se ji ju sinjen de seba ta jimba ta ane jimba ta kasa jimba ta ne jene rangi ngangi lonju guna jimarun hyamba oza Segundo, Tinti, Labadan, Tsong-kha-pa, ne Jene, Rangi, Longe, Ale, Jenda, Kujala to Komakune, and no Kujuba Charles on the Chimaronabe, Monotabanabe in Samarba, the nursing is a
Gomogo.
The Redo, Jene, Rangi, Nangis, ne Jene. Nasenji jejubi sinjen intelligence ruda.
Lessa.
Jene rang ngangi lonshu ku nas komago marbe.
Ale komago.
Ku komago sona.
Ale.
Ko jobi chana ro.
Indicate chak. Indicate chak.
Lonshu ku na jimaron nyaba so sa. What the nurse to so resulta.
So then it says the motivation is the desire to do such things as strike others, thinking such thoughts as how nice it would be if they were killed. So thinking how nice it would be if someone died, or if they were tied up, or their resources were stolen, either naturally or by another person. So the word Rinpoche is using is gomogo, which is stolen, and we find here a shorter word, go. So we'll just table that, but it's stolen is what we're going to translate it as right now. So now we get into the performance.
Joan samba dela, joa jeba samba delas, and jenda suba dan, timba dan, dibala suba what the yenda suya lekaja sanultaya jimbi and sanultaya lekaja ane ji komakuya what the lekaja tanina what is the joala joa is the joa.
So the performance is the thought that how nice it would be if they were killed or bound or their resources ruined, either or stolen, either naturally or by another person, or they lose their resources. Maybe the word "stolen" is used, or naturally or by another person. So that's the performance. Is that thought?
What the nasenji juju sinje de yidu mo tonde and control angore nasenji gore what the maduba tonne and control angore shedan jengore yidu mo tonza de dosha jengore doba yoba maina dosha yoba kalanjuro madu yoba maina shedan yoba kalanjuro to su zamana beta.
So here, then one sees a person as unattractive or ugly, and then anger arises, and this is how the malice takes place, is by having this thought that this person has this. So previously we stated that if there is not attachment, if there is not an attractive object present, then there is not attachment present. If there is not an inattractive object present, then there is not anger or hatred present. So we find that quoted. The lunga karne, the ngama, the lunga. So we find that in the root wisdom text by Nagarjuna. If there isn't this attractive object present, there's not attachment present. If there's not an unattractive object present, then there's not this hatred present. So we find this in the root wisdom text by Nagarjuna. So there's a large amount of debate that takes place around these topics. So if we say if it is attachment and it is hatred, it is necessarily a mistaken view. Lushi and Vicha. Then So why is it, so for instance, when we speak of covetousness, why is it a wrong consciousness? It's because we're exaggerating the qualities of something, putting qualities like a god's enjoyments on them through this exaggerated, this improper mental conduct, and we're arriving at this basis of covetousness based on this mental process, and this is why it is a wrong view. So when we say if it is this, it is that, why is it a wrong view? So we start to look at these individual points, such as covetousness. Why is covetousness a wrong view? So then we say if it is if there is a non-attractive object, then is there necessarily this arisal of anger? And we have to say that there has to be this mental conduct related to the object that is not attractive in order for there to be the arisal of this anger and so forth. So there has to be this thinking, this process around it, not just the unattractive object itself. Not yet. So then when you start to debate, so you say there's a person who's possessing covetousness, then the Yinjerpi... Oh, so if there is a person who is possessing covetousness that then has harsh words because of it, is this then malice. So Rinpoche is saying this is how we debate. If there is this, then there that. If there is someone who is covetous, who covets, but has harsh words, then are they also malice? Or are they coveting? Are they doing it because of covetousness, because they want, or is it malice at that point? So this is when we start to look at the finer details through debate of these points. So then someone who has covetousness, then who becomes angry, their covetousness is based on something that's attractive. Then does this anger then must come from something that's not attractive? So then how does covetousness and anger relate? If then how does it then become that? Because the object is something attractive, and so then we start to look at these other points as well. So someone who's an angry person sees something that's attractive, for instance, their friends. What happens there? So it's difficult when you start to look at these points in debate and try to compare them and how they relate to one another and what's actually one is experiencing. So when we look at these qualities of attachment and anger, the qualities of attractive that gives rise to attachment and qualities of inattractive that gives rise to anger, we say that there is this mental conduct related to these things that gives rise to that. So then we get to the completion or the culmination of malice.
And the same tajeba, what tajesuna, I know what the nursing tattoo.
So culmination is the determination or a desire to do such things as beating, or I will kill this person, and so forth. I wish this person were killed.
What the diva tajeba, suba tajeba, jimba tajeba, susu longo, the jesuna, what the nursing. So the
definition of the culmination is a determination or desire to do things such as beating, harmful things such as beating, and then here we have killed, bound, resources ruined, etc. Resources stolen.
So in
Jamyang Sheba's commentary, we find this section broken down into 3 categories as before: the measure of full-fledged, and then the full-fledged, and then not full-fledged. So we find very similar to the previous presentation. So if we look at the first category, the measure of the performance, we look at the first category, the actual performance, the abbreviated truth, we find the culmination is a determination or desire to do such things as beating. So this is the actual abbreviated truth. Then we get into full-fledged malice, and then we'll get into what makes it a not full-fledged malice.
So when we look at
these two here, we find what it makes, if these 5 aren't present, then it's not a full-fledged malice, and if the 5 are present, then it is a full-fledged malice. So we'll find these points that are going to be made now for a full-fledged or a complete.
nöji jula tatan tumbi ne chu tsaman zimbi shedang sentence jirendoa nöji julas ana soso ne ba ya jotele ne juba dan ana ji ndamda shuya yoro so nöji juinjiro a ane soso nöji jo soso nöji jotele an chanja dan juba dan wotele shuna nögro ta nöji jula tatan tumbi chu tsaman zimbi shedang sentence nöji jotele ane tatan tumbi tsaman zimbi shedang sentence ondu nöji jo naba jege jeya chala to su ngalo ya tan beje yidu mowa jige mo tselin de ba lo lo shere mo man wa
Okay.
tsaman zimba so denje zimbi shedang sentence tsaman zimba ni so de shedang sen ngaga nan jitres what
Deni.
nöji jula tatan tumbi ane chu tsaman zimbi shedang senta jije ngaga dan tangbat je naba sheba la mezobe senta tenbas nibat je
Bless up.
yang to chujin mebi kontru yu shebe sheba tenbe ane kondun zimbi senta kunzi ane chujin mayibi je santane ane kunzi je dadrimde ta diba tan sena je marun nyamba kuyu sen ta ngal naba je ge ko ane jigi se jabane yabre je marun nyabe
Bless up.
sen mala tabana marbe
Bless up.
jibat je ne sen je bala ngota mejins ne sen je bala ngota mejin nyemeli ngaba nywa meshi sejinebe sanada nga sansuna ne sen de yonsu zubi ne sen res nga de masan ne sen de yonsu mazubi ne sen what daman dabu re izar.
So then it's very similar, this presentation, to before. So when we look at it in terms of the other categories, if we look at it in terms of the measure of full-fledged or measure of not full-fledged, we find that it's complete if there are 5 attitudes. So there are full-fledged, that's the measure of how it makes it complete. And then if they aren't present, then it is not full-fledged. So we're getting into the 5 that make it full-fledged. So the attitude of hostility driven by a reifying apprehension of the characteristics of the causes of harm and the phenomena related to them. Thinking of the things that cause you harm and everything related to it, and being hostile or angry towards it. So this is the first point. Second, an impatient attitude by way of not being patient with those who are doing harm to you. So having impatience, seeing those who are doing harm to you as unattractive or ugly, and then not being patient with them. Resentful attitude based on repeated improper attention to and mindfulness of the causes of your anger. So this is similar to that improper mental conduct previously. Thinking again and again, repeatedly, about this, so almost meditating upon the causes of one's anger, repeatedly thinking, repeatedly familiarizing oneself with the causes of anger. An envious attitude which thinks how nice if my enemy were beaten or killed. So this is an aspiration, almost a prayer that I wish them harm, I wish they're beaten or killed. An attitude that is dominated by a lack of shame about your malice and obliviousness about the determination to be free from it, free of its faults. So it's very similar to the previous presentation.
What about yonsu zubi ne sen je ta tan ma yonsu ma zubi ne sen zang de jo de somba de ne sen zang de jo ne wo de ne ngo da yonsu zubi se yonsu ma zuba song ro song na ngo de sa je yonsu zubi se che chu nga cha je da yonsu ma zubi ne sen zang de jo de ne sen zang de jo de ne ren do
Hey, that's here.
ne sen zang de jo ne dana dala naba shesang sheba wus dana dala naba shesang sheba wu nyane tala Nobasha Shere Chenji, Samba Tenya Tanji, Nursing in Lhasa. They Tassinji in and Dege, Dal Nobashivaris, and Dal Nobashe San Sheba Wosa. Dal Nobashes and Sheba Onyabe, Kungal Nobajivaris, San Yana Tamba de Wade, Nursing Resita. Nursing in Lhasa. Tejin to Jenji near down Long Shudan. Gawala suba sentala nyaba maba dansa tejin to yenji nye dan susu magasa datu sinjiro dag nye dan longje dan gawala suba an sentale nyaba juji manatan nyaba juji maba dan shema ngeson duna nyabe manata bos nusu maga datu su shema tu nyewa yedatu ngeson jiwashu Chendele and the Kujuba Chabashu, what the nursing is to the Golo.
In the Kanga, the Nga Yomar, Dane Sunsan.
Ah, the Mazuba, the Nasaka Jamudo, Nursing Tonto Joa. Nama Song Nursing was Nursing Tonto, Namazu, Yonsu Mazubi nursing. Yonsu Mazubi nursing in the Nama Song nursing in Beja. What is it?
So this next category deals with not full-fledged malice. So it says attitudes of simple malice are as follows. So not full-fledged malice. It says, to the extent that you reflect, someone has harmed me or is harming me, and think about how to bring harm to whoever is doing or did the harm. So this improper mental conduct that is thinking about the person who is harming me and so forth, and then having malice towards them. Other examples of simple malice are the wish that someone else's relatives' resources or virtues, etc., might deteriorate, so that their loved ones, their relatives might deteriorate, their resources, their things, their enjoyments, their food, their drinks, all their virtues, root virtues, and so forth. All of these things, whether they are their qualities of their person or things that they have, there is a wish that they deteriorate in this lifetime, and the wish that someone else might go to a miserable realm in a future lifetime. So here it's also the wish that someone will go to the lower realm of existence. So these are all examples of simple malice.
So now we're going
to arrive at
what that does Abajana, what the Karsugore, the Wag Jutan, Dungan Jutu Kuaya Chamar.
So when we think about
Jachawatan, Ding Saba, what to Sulukuaya Chasuna, Lende Kuaya Chasuna, Conjuson Kuaya Chasuna, and the Tritin, Chogatan, Tuatazo, Jamachi Majuba Inaya, and Yawan Jagmares, and then Lolchinares. Lotus Chipene, Matan Halgene, Gabaton, Sanjik Dembatan Jene, Dajum, Tijela Jumatu, Taji, Dajum Channel, that's what is what the Jangi and
so we find this is we're now arriving at the section on wrong view, and because there is a large amount of information in this section, we're going to table it till the next class. But it's very important that we remember that when we look at what the causes for virtue and non-virtue, the causes for happiness are, we find that they're virtuous activities. When we look at the causes for suffering, we find that they are the non-virtuous activities. So when we get a very clear understanding of these, we'll know how to engage, we'll know how to move forward. So once we understand this and understand how we should act, and then we couple that with refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then we will necessarily be able to have good results from that. So when we look at the King of the Nagas Sutra, and we find that even if one does not transgress one's view, which is the faith of conviction in Buddha, and the refuge, and then the karma and its results. If one still has this view intact, even if they have fallen short on their ethics, their rituals, or their livelihood, they will still not have to be reborn into the hell realms if there is this intact view. And then they'll be born as Nagas, and then from there, born into the higher realms, in the God's realms, and then be able to become a foe destroyer from that. So we can become a foe destroyer. So we can see how powerful going for refuge is and developing faith and conviction in karma and its results. And we find that point being made in the Great Naga King Sutra, which I can't find anywhere right now, which I know where it is as soon as class ends. But those are the points that were made. I just wanted to make sure I got the name of the title correct. But the points that were made is that the beings who kept that vow, that view intact, even if they transgressed their livelihood or their ethics or rituals, they still were reborn as Nagas and then had the opportunity after that to be reborn into the higher realms and achieve the state of foe destroyer, those that aren't on the Mahayana track.
What does
So if we think about these things, it's very beneficial for us.
So if we
So ethics are very important going forward when we wish to go forward, because we see that the Tsutrim
Trabat Anadang, the Takante Chimba in and Dakante, Sotek Tutin, Shank Tutin, Sanga Tutin to do so much to get to Lulgin in summer.
Less so.
Louis Jabba to Sanji Swan, and the Sanji Quadi didn't pay because of Lunyon.
Less so.
And then I call is Tan Louis put down Pomo, give us. The Jugar Sanji should do, Sanji what the so that the Shansan Sang. To see Abusuma to Suking law, Lulgin to Son to Marbe, Lutu, Debashe, and Kushin, Matalje, Saji Dung Tembal Gine, and Keban del Drajumba, Tijan Shuba Matuba, Drajumba Tonus, Penshu, Chimba in and other.
So when we find in the questions of the Naga kings of the ocean, that's the exact title of it, we find that if one has even transgressed ethical behavior, so ethical behavior is important for us to be able to progress on the pathway. But we see even if one has transgressed one ethics, so we see ethical behavior such as the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtues, or the individual liberation vows, or the bodhisattva vows, or the tantric vows. So we find that even if one has transgressed one's ethical behavior, even if one has transgressed one's rituals or livelihoods, if the philosophical view is still intact, which is a faith and conviction in the refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and in karma and its results, then one will not have to be reborn into the hell realm. So we see how powerful this is, even if there's a transgression of these ethics. If this view is still intact, if this faith and conviction is still intact, then there isn't a hell realm rebirth. And in this text, we find that there is a question that the elder Naga is asking to Buddha of why during there it seemed to be a decline in the numbers of Nagas in the Naga land, that even his retinue had declined. But then in the future, there was at a time previously, but in these days, it seems like there are more Nagas in that realm than ever. And Buddha explained that during that time, there were, when there weren't as many, there were many people who took vows, and so forth, the various types of individual liberation vows and so forth. And because they weren't able to keep them, but they kept their philosophical view intact, which is referring to the faith and conviction in refuge and karma and its results, because they kept that faith intact, they were reborn as Nagas instead of in the hell realms. So this is the reason for the increase in number of Nagas, because these beings had the faith and conviction in these, in refuge and karma and its results, but did not have the proper ethics, livelihood, and rituals. So this is the reason that Buddha stated this, and then stated that, but during these beings will then, after their Nagas, be born into the higher realms, and then be able to achieve the state of foe destroyer. It says, except for those who enter the Mahayana. So nonetheless, it is said, though their practice is not pure upon their death as Nagas and the transference to a new life, they are reborn as deities or humans through the power of their unlapsed conviction in the teaching. Except for those who entered the Mahayana, all of them pass into nirvana during the teachings of those who will become Buddhas in this auspicious eon. So we see how powerful this understanding of karma and its results really is, if it has the ability to keep us from the hell realms. Dixon. Bene de tsuchim, the megewa Jew.
Then Sujabala Suba to the Raji Kanamatuara.
Right.
Jusan Karasana, Chimbak Sujana Dibare, Rajung Sujana Dibares. They in Sonsa and the Raji Kanamatuas res. The bomb with Sutin Tele, Sutin Logres. That Jimmy Kanamatua, the Chimba to the Jumanaya, and the Tabatsuki Chibi on the Shinju Marsana, what the Momburo. What the Zukalo, Jebala then. 죄도 용어로 대부분 주진들 추가로 놓다. 전에 초아사 로츠도 말을 가사쇼는 것도.
That's it. Okay.
도수야 아부 보마도네 레레라 예측이 대바다 건줄의 예측이 대바야 보여나. 니월 지금 말로 지는 로트서 하다 말지네. 계속 손을 동래 템발쇼는 다중 것도
So when we look at this what I was clarifying is the faith and conviction in karma and its results is just that faith and conviction in it, and faith and conviction in refuge. So this is even if one. So I asked about the word ethics because in this section on faith and conviction in karma and its results, we're dealing with the 10 non-virtues. And Rinpoche said that word ethics is broken too in common and uncommon ethics. Common ethics are ethics that for householders and the ordained are to be engaged in. So ethics of abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous activities would be ethics that are common. And then uncommon ethics would be ethics that are found, for instance, in the monk's vows or nun's vows that say not to cut down a tree. This is not common to the householder. This is an uncommon ethic. So when we look at this word ethics, that's what we're speaking of. So the actual thing that's keeping one from being reborn into the hell realm is this faith and conviction in these two topics of refuge and karma and its results. And Rinpoche reiterated that those beings who had this philosophical view intact, even if they had transgressed their ethics, livelihood, or rituals, were able to be born as Nagas, then after death, go to a new life as a deity or humans, and then pass into nirvana as long as they aren't on the Mahayana track. Dixon. So we're out of time. We will do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And we could keep our little dog T in our prayers. He passed away a couple days ago. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, likewise to Mantrabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandok, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi